5-out offense.
NBA is running a lot of 5-out.
Delay is just 5-out.
5-out.
If you're playing 5-out,
5-out. It's all the rage in the basketball world over the past several years. I even made a video about the 5-out revolution back at the start of 2021. But what if I told you that the SEC, the league that got 14 NCAA tourney berths and was considered by some to be the best conference of all time, that league's most used play was pretty much the exact opposite of 5-out. I was on the coaching staff at Mississippi State last season, and not only was this play a part of our offense, but it was a major part of the offense for 10 SEC teams in total. I know that because I was involved in scouting all of those opponents. The national champion Florida Gators were one of those 10 teams. They broke opposing defenses apart by using the play. Our name for it at Mississippi State was 3 across. It was brought into the SEC by Rick Barnes in Tennessee, but the origins of 3 across actually traces back to Steph Curry. In this video, I'll explain the play in detail and all of the different variations used. The SEC actually wasn't as reliant on 5-out as you might think. There's still a lot of bully ball going on in the conference. And even though 3 across is by no means a complicated set, it's one of the toughest plays to guard regardless. This is Bob McKillop. He was the head coach at Davidson from 1989 to 2022. He's probably most famous for coaching Steph Curry, but a close second is his motion offense. It's not a stretch to say McKillop is one of the best offensive coaches of all time. And the basic concepts of his secondary break, including the 3 across alignment, are now used by many teams around the country.
So we have a full court offense. We're trying to score in the first 7 seconds. We have designed places to go in our offense. The wings run to the corner. One of the bigs runs to the front rim. The other big is a trailer, and the point guard attacks the elbow. But he stays in the pocket. The pocket being like the quarterback in football. The pocket is between the lane lines, extended up and down the court. By going in the pocket, he could see both sides of the court. The defenders have to then worry about him attacking the middle, so they cannot be in denied position.
Yes, Steph Curry was first and foremost an incredible three-point shooter at Davidson, but he was also very good at driving in the pocket. The pocket is often referred to as the middle third of the court, and offenses like to keep the ball in the middle third because it prevents the defense from establishing a weak side, which is the side where help defenders typically come from. McKillop talks about how the purpose of the 3 across alignment is to deflate the defense.
By stretching to the corners, the wings now have deflated defense. By running to the front rim, you don't know which side the guy's going to post up on. So many coaches, they go down, they send a guy to the low block, right side, left side, whatever. You establish yourself on one block right away. All of a sudden, you said which side you're going to attack. But my point guard's in the pocket, so he can attack either side. My big is at the front rim, so he can post either side.
At Mississippi State, we used the formation as a set play, not just as a secondary break. We would slow the ball down and get into 3 across, with the 3 players lined up along the baseline. Notice how Tolu Smith is directly under the basket. His defender is facing the left side of the court, but Tolu's positioning allows him to post up on either the left block or the right block, carving out deep position and drawing a foul. These clips you're seeing are from 2023-24, the season before I got there. That season, 3 across was MSU's most used set play, running it 67 times throughout the year and scoring a very good 1.12 points per play on those 67 attempts. Last season, we didn't have 5 men like Tolu and Jimmy Bell who were physical sealers in the paint. So we put in a play called 3 across 3. Our 3-man became the player sealing under the hoop, and our 5-man took the 3's place in the corner. Here, Keyshawn Murphy isn't a 3-point threat, so he hangs out closer to the basket and gets a dunk when Ruben Chinyelu overhelps. Because defenses would sag off of our 5 men when we were in 3 across 3, the next part of the set was to skip the ball to the 5 and have Josh Hubbard run off for a dribble handoff. Here, Murph fakes the handoff and gets to the rim. That concept was inspired by a popular UConn set where they also skip the ball into a handoff. These next two plays are examples of how 3 across deflates the defense. Alex Condon has the ball in the pocket. If he was over on the wing instead, this defender would likely be in help position on the midline. But the combination of the location of the ball handler and the alignment of 3 across leaves the defense deflated. Wade Taylor can't get over quick enough to help. Now in this example, the defender does get into help position early enough to stop the ball, but all that does is leave Will Richard wide open in the corner for a 3-point attempt. One thing I haven't mentioned about Davidson is the butt screen. When they run 3 across, they have their big man on the perimeter face the basket with his butt facing the point guard. The butt screen is effective for a couple different reasons. First of all, it puts the screener in perfect position to shoot the 3. He doesn't have to turn around or even move after setting the screen. He's already facing the hoop for the jump shot. Second of all, the butt screen can create some confusion for the opponent's coverage. It doesn't really look like a ball screen, so the defense can often have a hard time deciding whether or not to even get into their ball screen coverage in the first place. Vanderbilt used butt screens this past season in their 5-out formation. They spread out on the perimeter, opened up the paint for drives, and set the butt screen. But the butt screen isn't the only way to set the screen in 3 across. Here, not only is Nick Pringle facing the ball handler like a normal ball screener, but his screen is much higher than Davidson's. He's way out beyond the NBA 3-point line. On the other hand, we had another set called 3 across nail where we used Josh Hubbard as the screener, but he was positioned towards the paint at the free throw line instead of out by the 3-point line. As you can already see, there are many different variations and tweaks you can make to the play's basic alignment. But what does an offense do if they don't score off of 3 across? For Davidson, the answer is to flow into their motion offense. They reverse the ball, clear their big man out of the paint, and usually set up a stagger screen. Davidson has finished in the top 10 nationally in points per game generated via off-ball screening action in 13 out of the 16 years that the stat has been tracked by Synergy Sports. In other words, nobody uses off-ball screens better than the Wildcats. At Tennessee, Rick Barnes has been running a version of Bob McKillop's offense for many years now. The Volunteers also flow into stagger screens after starting in 3 across. And it's no coincidence that Barnes and McKillop are close friends. The two of them go back a long way. They were on the same Davidson staff together as assistant coaches in 1979. This past season, Georgia also flowed into staggers after initially starting in the alignment. Here, Dakota LaFew rejects the stagger and finishes at the rim. But if we go back to Tennessee, I think the best 3 across team I've ever seen is the 2019 Volunteers. That team finished 3rd in the country in KenPom adjusted offensive efficiency. They had a great sealer in the paint in undersized but physical big man Grant Williams. The Vols looked to post him up early and often. They also had a lightning fast point guard in Jordan Bone who was fantastic at driving in the pocket and finishing at the rim. Bone would go on to play just 24 games in the NBA, but he was a great college floor general. There's plenty of other things to flow into out of the formation. In 2025, Tennessee and Georgia both used 3 across to then initiate zoom action. Here the zoom action is for Chaz Lanier to generate a 3-point look off of the dribble handoff. And here's another example from Georgia where they look to create zoom action for Blue Kane, but again the Bulldogs reject the screen for a cut to the hoop. My favorite set play built off of 3 across came from South Carolina. The Gamecocks come off the middle ball screen and pass to the screener, which triggers both players in the corners to lift way up past the slots. Notice how these 4 players are way beyond the 3-point line. That allows Colin Murray Boyles to duck his man in for a lob pass over the top. There's a few things to point out about the national champion Gators' usage of the formation. Here you see they have the 3 players lined along the baseline, but the ball screen is being set in the outer third instead of the middle third. When Denzel Aberdeen drives off the pick, you can see Chinyelu sealing his man up the paint. Chinyelu is one of the best sealers in the country, and while he only averaged 6 points per game for Florida, they used him to carve out space in driving lanes for their scorers. When Chinyelu is at the top of the key in 3 across as the ball screener, the Gators use roll replace action. The screener rolls to the basket, and the big underneath the basket then replaces up to the top. I want you to think about this play from Peyton Marshall of Missouri's perspective. He has to hedge the ball screen, then sprint back to recover to Chinyelu, who has already rolled to the basket. Technically, this should be Marshall's job to help on the Aberdeen drive, but Marshall is so worried about getting bodied by Chinyelu, he isn't even thinking about help rotations. These are examples by Chinyelu of what are usually referred to as Gortat screens. He rolls into the paint and physically hits his man, carving out space in the process.
I already have a feeling about what some of you might be thinking. Shouldn't these physical duck-ins and Gortats be called illegal screens?
Well, in all the film I watched for this video, this is the only clip I found where an offensive foul was called on the duck-in. RJ Godfrey got called for the push-off. 3 across also isn't some magical play that works every time. The spacing can often be poor if the timing of the drive and the duck-in aren't right. Here, the spacing from Ole Miss is bad to begin with, but then the corner cut makes it even worse, with 3 Auburn defenders able to clog up the paint. And here, both Texas A&M players cut from the corners, which leaves 4 defenders stacked on top of each other in the paint. On drives in the pocket, if the player in the corner is a non-shooter, that defender can just sag off the corner and dare the ball handler to pass it. Spacing is only as good as each player's ability to make their defender respect them. Again, this is the type of awkward spacing that the formation can sometimes lead to, with the point guard trying to pass to the big while basically being right in his lap. But there are players like Tolu Smith here who can thrive in these situations, which I call the trenches. Players who have the ability to still control the paint even when it gets crowded. And that ability to thrive in tight spaces, aka the trenches, is perfect for 3 across. My favorite thing that happens from playing in the trenches is when the big ducking in not only seals off his own man, but in the process also seals off the player guarding the ball, basically making 2 defenders collide into each other. Playing in the trenches also puts you in very good positioning for offensive rebounding. It's no coincidence that with Chinyelu patrolling the paint for Florida, the Gators rank 5th in the country in offensive rebounding percentage. In fact, the SEC had the highest offensive rebounding percentage of any high major conference. So as much as 5-out has taken over basketball at the highest levels, it's still very possible to win by playing 2 bigs and positioning one of them deep into the paint like we've seen in this video. Not only did Florida win it all with that style, relying heavily on 3 across, but Houston and Auburn also made the Final Four playing 2 bigs together. There's no one inherently correct way to play offense, and that's what makes the sport so great.
Thank you very much for watching. It's been 15 months since my last video, and I'm very grateful for anyone who's still here despite the long break. If you want to know more about why I chose to leave Mississippi State and what the future plans of this channel are, I have a newsletter down in the description that explains everything. I also talk about a major project that I'm working on. By subscribing to the free newsletter, you'll receive updates on that project and be notified when it's finished. Thank you again, and I'll see you in the next one.